Good evening. Welcome to Defacto Review, our weekly in-depth analysis on the current news and affairs with our economist and commentator, Mr. Jagal Defacto.
Good evening.
And I'm your host, Namsredsit. You can join in on our conversation on the MNB World Facebook page and on Twitter with hashtag Jagal_Defacto. Now for the topics of today. The incident with coal briquette, and the Mongolian People's Party is preparing for the election. The protection of the cultural heritage. Now, on to our first topic. This winter, the residents of the Gir district will be using the coal briquettes, but there has been an unfortunate incident where 6 people have died because of carbon dioxide poisoning after using this coal briquette. This incident caused an uproar among the people, and every media has reported about the statements made by the authorities. So let's get into our first question about this issue. There are a number of different solutions to this air pollution problem we have, and the fastest solution would be insulating the houses and gears and distributing the fuel-efficient stoves like the government is doing right now. But the long-term solution is to build more apartments. But the result of trying the faster solution caused the death of many people last week. So what exactly went wrong? What happened? Why did this happen?
That briquette, we have not used to use that briquette. And that 6 cases of death is being investigated. Total 86 call the police received. 81 cases that have been registered, and there are some people who have poisoning, some health problem. What is happening is from this year, the raw coal is not permitted to bring to Ulaanbaatar city. Instead, they will use this coal briquette, which is produced from the coal, washed coal from Tavun, the South Gobi Aymak, and they are adding some 5% other things and get together made this briquette. And this 5 case mostly a case where there were leakage of carbon monoxide to their houses, where unfortunately we had this case of death. The similar thing happened also in late 60s in Korea, Seoul. For 10 years, they have lost more people's life than all the infectious diseases, according to their statistics. Total 3,500 people were victims of that carbon monoxide poisoning in Korea, and they have been changing. They were changing their fight. It was not just carelessness; it is also an education matter. Most importantly, in South Korea, their system heating is different. They heat the houses from the floor. There is a space under the floor, and from here the stove and the hot smoke goes, which is carbon monoxide. You cannot see it. You can almost smell it. So you go through and under this floor, and on the other side the smoke comes out. So it was a leakage there, and it took quite some time. And they have registered what they have in Korea. Have registered everybody, certified those who is doing so-called this ondol, that this is the stove with that system to who is making. So in Mongolia, probably we need that. We need to register each chimney, so that and also make sure that each stove works safely. And that's, I think, next step to do. Well, for a while, the city is planning to give the sensor of this carbon monoxide in each household. There are 220,000 Gir district households which are burning this briquette, and this year they cannot burn other coal. Plus, at night they will receive, like the year before last year, they will receive free electricity from 9 o'clock to 6 a.m. Free. I mean, it is paid from the budget, state budget, and this year is going to be over 20 billion Mongolian tugriks cost. So this is the only thing, well, so far, and I think it's very successful so far because now at this time every year the smoke in Ulaanbaatar city is terrible usually. Minus 15 degrees, they will start burn, 220,000 gears will start burning the stove, and usually it's a big problem. Today, the air in Ulaanbaatar city is clean, so it means the measurement we are taking under the Prime Minister Huru Suk is a right one.
But as usual, the coal briquette problem was politicized. Let's assume that this year's problem is solved and we make do for now, but do we have the budget? Is it possible to make do with the coal briquette again next year?
Look, yeah, unfortunately, this death of 6 persons are very much politicized, and many people want to win political dividend on that, which is very unfortunate because you cannot make a political statement about the death of people. Nobody is doing it on the purpose. It's a matter of having safety rules to follow. Unfortunately, that cause, in particular, some statements by our president, etc., some political democratic party statement, etc., makes that daily work, normal work of that only plant that is producing that called briquette, making it impossible. Sometimes it is interrupted. People are not stimulated to work there. Some people are leaving the jobs. So unfortunately, because of this too much political cases, the pressure coming on those people who are producing it, this experiment may end. And even some politicians say that maybe then we will stop it and let them use raw coal. Then they will see the difference, etc. But not at the cost we want to change or to stop that work in Mongolia, in Ulaanbaatar, we started. As far as cost concerned, yes, there is a cost, and we have to do it next year again. And also, additional cost is this free electricity, but the loss we have otherwise from the smoke, the health issue, children's death, and all those costs are way higher than the experiment what we do now. So Mongolia has to go ahead until we have a decent housing for everybody, so that not Ulaanbaatar, a single family, any family in Ulaanbaatar has not to burn coal.
Burning coal is causing all the pollution in the city, most of it.
Exactly, it's become really intolerable for recent years, and Ulaanbaatar people are very much supporting the air we have today, which is a result of this test.
The root of this problem itself is poverty, and you wrote an article defining this as poverty in rural area. What is the long-term solution to this problem?
Indeed, poverty is the root of the problem, in particular in the rural areas, because there is no chance to have a good jobs or to make a good business. People are run away from rural areas to Ulaanbaatar city and other IMAX centers, Darkhan, Erdenet cities, because with this zone development of Mongolian policy didn't work, because they did not give financial freedom to the development to the leaders in the region, and all taxes are collected here into Ulaanbaatar, and very few goes back. So at least a quarter or half of the budget collected in the taxes collected in remote rural areas in IMAX to stay there, so that they solve their own social issues themselves there instead of being solved from Ulaanbaatar. So we should give more financial freedom to even the royalty they are taking from the mining area, for example, is to stay certain percent there. So we need to change our policy to develop Mongolia everywhere. And the problem of Mongolia is for a territory that equals Germany, Spain, France, Portugal, all together, and there are only 3.2 million people, which is making the infrastructure very expensive investment. So we need to be very clever to manage so that in the rural areas people work and continue their normal life.
Okay, thank you for that. Now let's get into our second topic. There are 33 registered political parties in Mongolia. Last week, Mongolian People's Party promised an apartment to every household and started registering people. So our first question about this one is that we talked about the new credit of trust draft during last week's Defacto review and about the parliament members with little to no knowledge about the economy submitting such drafts. But this week we have another example of this one. The Mongolian People's Party is going to provide every household with apartments, apparently. Is this possible? What are they getting at?
First, it is not possible, but it's the sign of an election coming. This Mongolian People's Revolutionary Party is a party where the head is the ex-president of the country, Mr. Inkbayar. And these people are consciously doing this, and which is illegal. I think by this fake, false promises, they will maybe already withdraw their right to be running for elections, because it is forbidden by election to promise money, material things. But in spite of that, they do it. And last week, they said 20,000 people. They promised to register 20,000 people. And last week, they did some 6,000 registered. This week, probably again. So basically, what the general secretary of this party, Jamian, says, Ertin Jamian, said that if we win the election, if we have power, immediately next year, these 20,000 people will have immediately an apartment, which is completely wrong and completely baseless. He said also that for this to have an apartment for everybody, the country needs $12 billion US, which is very easy to raise in the country, which is again not true. Just compare with OT, for example, they have been invested at $7 billion US so far, and then in others have also they invest further, and we saw how much it requires effort to create this amount of money. Basically, it's the equivalent of our economy. So if it was that easy, we could have already apartment for everybody. So they are misusing, they are promising wrong. Unfortunately, they are promising apartment, which is very weak point of so many 220,000 people in this Ulaanbaatar city alone. Everybody wants to be, and they say that also they will take apartments from some and then give to others. So it's a completely unacceptable lie, what they say.
Does this promise mean that the election campaign of 2020 has already begun?
Of course.
So they are making populist promises and almost playing with the idea of based on the most pressing issue of housing in Ulaanbaatar city today. And what's your take on this?
That's unfortunately people still, because as you said, it's a pressing issue, urgent issue, and everybody wants to have an apartment. We have at the same time some 40,000 apartments empty. It's about maybe a bit less, but still we have many thousands at least apartments empty. They're looking for a customer, and 220,000 people on the other hand looking for an apartment. So these discrepancies of supply and demand have to be solved somehow, but probably from the demand side. And that's what this is a quite baseless promise, but nevertheless, they also promise to continue with even broader scheme, this mortgage system that which is almost bankrupt today. It was started by the Democratic Party in 2013, mortgage loan, which is giving people 8% interest rate after 30% of total payment, premium paid, and which is not possible, visible, sustainable when the market rate is about 20% in the country. So basically the differences were paid by the other people who, whether in apartments or somewhere else. But so this mortgage loan didn't work, and the central bank is stopping that loan from the beginning of the next coming January 1st. So this kind of wrong expectations creating is just only of political benefit that they're looking for.
And after all, the people are people elect the parliament members, and government is the representation of those people. How can we stop people from believing these people who falsely promise things and making them to make themselves elected for this? How can we stop people from electing these people?
It is very hard for the people not to believe in promises, because they think, what happens if really they win, or what I lose if I go there and register. That's the whole move of these so far maybe 12, 15,000 people who have registered with this revolutionary party their names in the hope that they will receive an apartment. It's like, promising all birds in the sky to you, and that's what our Mongolian politicians do. Either they give you cash or nadas and houses, and when it will be stopped, it will be stopped when we will not have poor people. 1/3 of the country, the population is poor today, and it will be stopped when the people have a good education, a strong will to be, strong hope that they can create their own life. And with this country, relatively, we give to everybody. Mongolia gives a chance for even not so good, but education, and everybody. So it's education matter, it's skills matter. It is just the skills that we can develop people to earn their money, their life, to their money. So many things to be made to go out from poverty. One thing is clear, that the state should be smaller. State should not do the things that the private companies can do. But in our country, that's the state does. And plus state controls many prices, which become a wrong information for businesses to take over, to run or to start the businesses. So this kind of a lot so-called, let's say, the hangover of communist system keeps staying in this country.
You mentioned that making these false promises are illegal.
Illegal.
Could you tell us more about the law about these false promises? Do they get implemented if they turn out to be wrong?
They according to the election law, unfortunately we keep changing election law before every election. It's a unique country. How is it possible? But now they're going to again to change that election. But according to the last election law change, one should not do promises of material things, money, whatsoever, in the sake of having more political votes. So it is illegal, and I think this Mongolian People's Revolutionary Party is closing their door to be in the list of political parties that will be running for election in 2020.
So what are the consequences?
They will not be in the list, I hope.
So there is no point in law if there is no consequence, is there?
Well, they just simply will not be elected. They will not be listed in the political parties. The list that will be given to the voters to elect. And plus, they're going to make a whole Mongolia is one constituency. Right? Before it was 76 constituency, now one constituency. So this is going to be very, very interesting election next year, because people will elect those politicians they know somehow. They will not elect anybody they don't know. So for newcomers, it's going to be very difficult. The independent runner is also very difficult. And those who are in these two political parties, whom faces the people more or less they know, they will be most likely to be elected. But however, this time people have become very reluctant about these two political parties, which were running the country either together or separately.
Okay, so let's get into our third topic. For a time, Mongolia had partially abandoned its cultural sector, and are we facing the consequences now? This weekend, a number of historical buildings, such as Natural History Museum, National Academy of Drama Theatre, National Academic Theatre of Opera and Ballet, and the National Library can no longer be operational because of old age. People were shocked by the news that these buildings will be demolished for new buildings. Many oppose this idea because these buildings are the part of cultural heritage of Mongolia and claims that the people behind this are in it for the money. Also, the Memorial Museum of the Victims of Political Repression was just demolished this week. So our question about this one is this: what is your take on this?
Well, let's take this two theaters and one central library. In particular, these two theaters. These are the buildings, is our priceless values, because they were our previous generations have been creating their values on which we are brought up, and it's like any normal country will not do that. They will not demolish these old buildings. They instead restoration. They should do a restoration and to exactly have it just as it is outside, at least now. And it requires some time. And meanwhile, what is the best solution would be is to create some new culture center in Ulaanbaatar city somewhere in nearby, and like I was living and studying in Denver, Colorado, U.S. They have one art center where under the one roof some 10 or so theaters existing, and they have all own facilities supporting the performance of those theaters. At the same time, many of them can perform. So instead, we suggest to create this kind of center and move all this performance, all the artists working there, performing there, because this renovation of these old buildings will take some time, and we should have normal conditions, good money to restore these old buildings. There are some buildings which is already not possible to restore, and in which cases some countries do, for example, either some of them do rebuild them inside of the buildings, or they just take a wall of it or corner of it, then the corner of it keeps staying there, then inside some bigger picture and all this, what was the reminding what was that building about. So this kind of things to be made.
Is this a result of Mongolian government completely ignoring this cultural sector? Because would it have been possible to restore these buildings before it was impossible to restore anymore?
That's unfortunately our character. And it's like, we drive the car until the engine is finished. Then we try to find the engine. That's what was the behavior and approach to our buildings, not only culture buildings, the way how we construct a road, for example. We never do a maintenance. It's like these buildings had been never. The people inside now, including the famous actress Sulta, says that it's completely now. Even the briquette is almost. It has a fungal and etc. So the foundations has cracked, etc. So how can we make it into that level of ignorance for those important buildings? So we like our politicians, they look only for 4 years, and every time if a new political party wins, another political party wins, then they replace everybody, even including in the cultural, like place like theater, museum, they change their heads too. So and those people know that the next one, maximum next election, they will be replaced. So nobody is thinking longer term in this country, unfortunately. So that's the true picture of how we Mongolians take care of our cultural heritage.
Well, is the city planning cause of all this problem? Because, for example, the Memorial Museum of the Victims of Political Repression was just demolished, and a new 22-story building will be built in its stead. But only the first floor will be dedicated for the museum.
Oh, they're going to make the same building on the first floor inside of the building. And that's the only solutions. Otherwise, they are demolishing itself. 80 years old building of the first speaker of the country, Gindeng, just after the death of Bogdo Khan. The New Mongolia had Bakhoral. This man, Gindeng, was the head of that Bakhoral. And the building was made for him. And it's wooden buildings. It's impossible to this cannot exist anymore, this building. So what they do is they just make numbers on the walls and they rebuild it inside of the building. I think it is the only possible solution so far they can find. As far as the 22 floor concerned, it's less than half kilometer from Sukubata Square. So it has a very big value land-wise. And the people using this high value of the land, make their offices, which also gives them opportunity to maintain. And that museum as exhibition, as a museum of reparations that happened in 30s. And this Gindeng was killed in Moscow. And his wife and daughter had no document. With the help of the students, they were running back to Ulaanbaatar. So when they came back, so that's the history of the building. And there are a lot of similar cases of several other historic buildings waiting for the same fate soon. Of course, we somehow by all means, to keep these buildings somehow, either inside of the building or as it is now, but outside is to be the same. Inside there could be some changes. Otherwise, it's impossible to maintain. They will disappear anyway.
But what about the other buildings now? Let's assume that these cannot be restored, but there are monasteries and other historical buildings that should be restored and kept at all costs.
Those which is possible, we can restore. We should do it as much as possible. Those which we cannot restore anymore, it's impossible. Then it's like keep a building the same back again, or just change out, just keep outside the same, inside to repair. This kind of approach is to be made, and this is the way how you keep your history. You cannot demolish and destroy and make something instead of it.
Would the government take any attention to this?
The society is talking a lot. We are already divided into two camps, and very strong movement is going on social media. We need to discuss and come to the conclusion that makes both sides agree, and we should keep our heritage staying as it is, and we will find a way. We must find a way to restore it in different ways instead of demolishing. But there are some buildings which cannot exist anymore. But it doesn't mean that the land is to be taken over by somebody for another purpose. Things should go as it is. That's the whole thing, I think, all this people's movement in the country towards keeping the cultural heritages.
Okay, so thank you for that. That is all the time we had for today. Thank you for staying with us. We will see you next week with more topics.
Thank you. See you later. One is